Once again, thank you all for joining us. We will be speaking of the Supreme Court decision about the ballot in Colorado and other interesting topics. Of course, I'm Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist and chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Just kind of reveling in some good news. We got an addition to the family. KJ's brother, you've met him. Him and his wife had a baby about an hour and a half ago.
Oh, nice. Is that Caden?
No, no, yeah, Kanan, yeah, Kanan.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So finally some good news.
Yeah, right. Well, we could use it.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
also joined on location by Sheba Abraham from the League of Women Voters. What's going on, Sheba?
Well, not too well. It's a lot going on. Um, the mayor has a lot to do in Poughkeepsie, but other than that, things are pretty quiet. And nothing too much is happening with me.
So you're at the Poughkeepsie Common Council meeting, is that it?
Yes,
Okay, now that's the equivalent of their city council.
yes, that's the city
Okay.
council.
I imagine
Yes.
it's relatively small, certainly compared to New York City, right? You know how many people are on
Uh,
that council?
um, it's 8 wards, so it'd be 8 people,
Okay.
and yeah, and the mayor joins the meeting as well.
And I also imagine that's not a full-time job, right? They work part-time?
Yes, I think they do.
Yeah,
But it's not full. It's full time because people always have issues that need to be addressed.
sure, sure.
It's full time on that.
On that side, right. But they probably
Yes.
all hold down regular jobs outside of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting comparing New York City politics with other places. And you think of Poughkeepsie, it sounds like almost a big city, right? But really very small compared to New York City, of course.
Right. But they still have some of the same issues. They have the homeless population. They have the migrant issue. There are a lot of there are issues. Although it's a small town, they still have some of the big city issues.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely interested to speak more on that. We're also joined tonight via audio by Andre Bystroff, political consultant from Bryant Bystroff. What's going on, Andre?
hey, how is everybody doing? Got a bit of a sore throat, but I am here.
Nice. Well, we're glad you're here because it is also Super Tuesday, and I've got the TV on in the background there on mute, trying to see if anything interesting comes across the screen. It looks like nothing too surprising so far.
Yeah, I think they just called Virginia for Trump against Haley, but that was to be expected. I don't think that we're going to have a lot of surprises tonight.
Right. Well, this is
But
actually what I wanted to ask about, Andre. Haley did win the DC Republican primary
yes,
by a
she did.
very large margin. It was like 65-35, something like that.
Sure.
What do you think explains that? I don't think it's just a matter of, well, even DC Republicans are more liberal, they're not MAGA or whatever. I think there's something deeper to it because even
Well,
in blue
so
state, you
so
see Trump winning.
so there will be a couple of factors. Folks in DC could see firsthand that, this is a man who perpetuated an insurrection against this country in that very city.
And that's
That's
it.
Right.
one. Number two, you know, I don't want to, kind of overstate this point necessarily and stuff, but at the same time, Trump does significantly better with more undereducated voters. DC is a city and district full of a lot of, if conservative thoughts, but folks with higher degrees, with a lot more college educated folks and stuff. And yeah, so when more educated conservative voters come out, despite the fact that they might like a lot of those, tax cuts for the super wealthy stuff, they don't like the instability and the kind of general chaos that he brings as a candidate. It makes sense that they would be Haley supporters and they would just want to go back to kind of the George W. Bush years.
Right. I mean, so look, in New York, though, you see Trump with a major advantage over Haley, right?
I'm sorry?
In New York and similar
Yeah,
to
but
state,
again, we're not, in Trump's own words, we're not sending our best and brightest and stuff to vote for Donald Trump amongst the New York GOP. These are, again, some of the, broiest of bros that are going to go out and have taken over New York State GOP as well. We have
yeah.
some of the dumbest candidates representing conservative policy or politic in New York State currently. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
so
interesting to look at, and I don't know the makeup of DC Republicans too well, but my theory was because I did spend time living in the DC area, a lot of people who live there work in government, right? They work in Congress, the Capitol, and so forth. What if these are largely DC staffers, maybe who are from other parts of the country or whatever, but they work in Washington in politics, and they don't like Trump because maybe the political class doesn't like him. Maybe that's indicative of even the members that they worked for potentially secretly not liking Trump, right?
Correct.
Maybe that's what it is, that it's the political class, the whole drain the swamp thing, even that he's seen as the enemy of that class.
We've seen a lot of people that worked with him in his administration have gone against him since leaving office too. So
Right, which we
maybe,
have to remember is the mistake he's going to fix for his potential second term.
what do you mean?
Mistake he's going to fix?
Meaning that he's not going to have anybody who disagrees with him. There's not going to be any more, op-ed articles in the New York Times talking about I'm a member of the resistance within the Trump administration. You're not going to have any of those things. It's going to be, just these stock fascists and stuff with secondary degrees that are going to make sure that the government can function towards a very nihilistic, fascistic, isolationist direction in a second Trump White House. And we
What do you
should
mean
be
a
all
second?
very fearful.
It's not, and it's not just the second term. This is, he's going to get in and he's going to install himself as president for life.
I mean,
So,
yes. The once current and future president.
Well, I believe the word he uses is dictator.
yeah,
Emperor.
well, and he uses it very explicitly. So, yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, this is this is that guy that's going to be there for the next however long.
And by the way, I would like to point out, some of his diehard loyalists, unlike his supporters, are not stupid. You know what I mean? As heinous as they are, they're not stupid individuals. Stephen Miller, and Steve Bannon, they're not dumb guys. They're very scary, monstrous, heinous folks, but they're not stupid. And so we should be very, very cautious.
Yeah, a lot is at stake right now. So I wanted to get into the Colorado decision, right? The Supreme Court came out with this decision restoring him to the ballot in Colorado, overturning the Colorado Supreme Court. But Jay, we had spoken about this in the past. And in fact, I even had a mark my words post on Reddit saying that this would happen. I was correct in what I said, because I said not only would the court put him back on the ballot, but that they wouldn't even decide on whether he engaged or aided in insurrection, right? The decision would not be about that at all. It will be about the process, the language of the 14th Amendment and so forth. And that's exactly what we saw. The part that may be surprising in a sense is that it was a per curiam decision, meaning a decision of the court, unanimous, right? 9-0, if you wish, and not a split 5-4 decision as some thought it might be, or maybe a 6-3. However, with that being said, you did have concurring justices who agreed with the result, but not the rationale you use, at least not as far as the majority went in their rationale. So there is a lot, I think, to unpack here. The first thing that stood out to me is that
disappointing.
Barrett, who obviously was a Trump appointee on the conservative side, is siding with the liberals who concurred, the three liberals, Sotomayor, Jackson, and Kagan. However, she wrote her own separate concurring opinion, which echoes the same thing that the liberals said. So it was like she agrees with them, but she didn't want to say that she agrees with them. So she just said, I'm going to write my own opinion, which says the same thing that they say.
What was the difference? What would you say is the difference of the liberal versus conservative thoughts on the matter? Because I'm not surprised, by the way, that it was a 9-0 decision. And I'll talk about why after you talk about.
I am, but go ahead.
Okay. So in the 9-0 decision, which it's just weird how this ends up working out, because it's a 9-0 decision. So that means even the liberals signed on to this decision, but then they went and wrote their own separate opinion, which contradicts some of what they signed on to in the first place, right? So it's kind of odd how that ends up happening. But in the per curiam decision, which you can tell by reading the whole thing is really the opinion of the conservative justices, they not only restored him to the ballot, but they create this whole mechanism for how disqualification would work under the 14th Amendment. And they say that their
ruling, go through Congress.
Say it again?
It would have to go through Congress.
Yeah, right? So their ruling is that states can disqualify state candidates under the insurrection clause, but states cannot disqualify federal candidates under the insurrection clause. You would need Congress to create a law which would empower them or create some kind of mechanism for that to happen. And they really go beyond the scope of the question. And that's really the beef that the liberal justices have. The liberal justices said they agree with the result, that the states don't have the authority to do it as the law currently stands. But the liberals say they don't think that the court needs to go on record and say Congress has to do it. And they have some interesting examples. One of the things that they point out, which I found pretty interesting, was they said, what if there was a federal case? What if an insurrectionists were in power and were to indict you and you were on trial in federal court? Under the Supreme Court's ruling now, you wouldn't be able to use the insurrection clause as a defense. You wouldn't be able to raise that to the court because the majority here is saying that Congress can only do it. So without Congress doing it, you're out of luck. No one can access the insurrection clause.
I mean, the thing is this. So the liberal justices are very much aware that there are certain insurrectionists that are currently members of Congress. And that is why they're saying that a mechanism shouldn't be drawn from Congress, and they do not want to put that in writing because they are very well aware that Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be very safe in her Georgia seat. I do want to point out that the reason that it was quite obvious that there was not going to be anything else but a 9-0 decision is because of things like the Alabama Supreme Court and the fact that you have such morons on the bench in certain states that view fetuses as children, like literal children.
Mm.
And what about the idea that an Alabama Supreme Court just banned somebody like Joe Biden because he's a pro-choice candidate and just call him a serial killer, and therefore he's no longer part on the Alabama ballot? So of course you can't have, things like that.
Okay, so you're saying that even the more liberal justices are afraid of things like that, and so they're trying to make
of the various morons that certain state houses have put up into their Supreme Court and their highest courts. Yes, of course. Do you want to trust like a future Democrat's position on a Southern ballot line and stuff?
Well, on that point, and this is actually a distinction that I wanted to make, that there is validity to what you're saying, because the 14th Amendment was, for those who don't know, by way of history, right? It came out of Reconstruction, right? This is post-Civil War. It's one of the Reconstruction amendments. And of course, it's a very versatile amendment. It has a lot of different clauses. It speaks to a lot of different issues. But it was passed to really limit the powers of the states and give more to the federal government, in a sense, because there was concerns about Confederate states, right? And insurrectionists in the states getting elected and whatnot. And so most of the constitutional provisions, I mean, the Constitution really gives more power to the states than the federal government. It very explicitly limits the power of the federal government. So the 14th Amendment was almost a way to counteract that, in a sense, and say, well, hold on, in this way, we're limiting the power of the states and giving more to the federal. And so that was a big issue, even for the liberal justices in this case. They said, you're relying on this 14th Amendment, which is really, if you want to call it an anti-state amendment, right? It's limiting in terms of state power, but then you're relying on that to say states have all this power here. And that was a problem for them, especially when there is language in there talking about Congress has the authority to enforce these provisions. Yes, but it is a little bit more complex than that. As I was saying, the liberal justices on the concurrent opinion talk about the idea that now, because they're saying that only Congress can act here at all, you wouldn't be able to raise that as a defense in a criminal case. They're also talking about this idea of, wait a minute, there is language in the amendment saying that the disqualification of a candidate can be removed by 2/3 vote of Congress, right? You need 2/3 to remove a disqualification. But if the Supreme Court decision now going forward is going to be that Congress has to act with the majority vote to disqualify someone in the first place by passing legislation, you have an incongruence, because Congress could pass by simple majority a vote repealing such law, disqualifying someone. And now you're back to square one, which is they're not disqualified. But doesn't that conflict with the provision that you need 2/3 vote to remove the disqualification? And so they're saying that logically it doesn't make any sense that Congress has to act affirmatively to disqualify someone because of that 2/3 provision that's in there.
Right, but then presumably, though, wouldn't if you end up disqualifying somebody by 50% plus one, you would not therefore have enough votes to get 2/3 to override that disqualification.
Correct, but you don't need 2/3 because you can, again, by 50% plus one, pass a law repealing the law that you just passed. And now you're
Right.
back, now you have no laws on the books. Now you get nothing. And if the law is that you can only disqualify someone with an act of Congress, you don't have that act of Congress anymore. And so that 2/3 provision is kind of redundant. It doesn't do anything, right?
Right. Okay.
So there are definitely challenges and problems, I think, with this decision. Barrett, she wrote a very simple, very short concurring opinion saying that basically we should have just answered the question, said states cannot do it, and leave it at that. We didn't have to go any further. We didn't have to say it had to be Congress. And then you had the liberals saying essentially the same thing, but they went into even more detail. So Barrett could have joined them. It seems to me that she didn't because she didn't want to put a name on an opinion with the other three liberals, but she's saying the same thing they are. So weird, I think, a weird breakdown here.
Still quite disappointing. I expected that, like you mentioned earlier, I was one who expected it was going to be basically a split type of thing. And even though we did talk about that argument that they're gonna use instead of going the insurrectionist route, it's just like this idea that there's gonna just sit by and watch as it all burns for semantics. That's very
Right.
disappointing.
And that's an interesting point because I did expect, and this is where I was wrong. I expected the dissenting justices in this to talk about how he should have been disqualified from the ballot and how he was an insurrectionist. I thought there was going to be discussion on whether he committed or engaged or aided the insurrection on January 6th. And that was completely absent from the case, right? Even the liberals don't talk about that. They just talk about the dangers of an alleged insurrectionist, but they don't get into the merits of that. To be fair, legally they're not supposed to if they agree on the process, right? Because cases are supposed to be disposed of with the path of least resistance, so to speak, right? If you can dispose of a case using a certain rationale, you're not supposed to go beyond that. And in fact, that is what is being criticized by the liberal justices. They're saying we could have disposed of this case on the civil grounds that the states could not have disqualified him. Why are we going the extra step and saying it's got to be Congress? It's got to be done this way. Yeah, that's beyond the scope of the court. And so if the justices do agree that the process isn't there, right, that the language of the amendment doesn't warrant disqualification by the states, then they aren't supposed to have further discussion. They're not supposed to talk about the merits of insurrection, right, what his behavior was and all that. That's not even relevant at that point. And so that is why you didn't see it. But it did surprise me because I thought they were going to come out a different way.
Yeah.
By the way, did you guys talk about John Oliver's offer of 10 million to Clarence Thomas?
No.
So which one?
John Oliver owed oh no, it's not even 10 million. So John Oliver, I think, presented Clarence Thomas with an offer to step down from the Supreme Court, and he'll pay him $1 million for life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I wanted to talk about
an
an RV, you said?
Yeah.
For
and an RV. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the qualifications for president generally because there has been some confusion on this. I saw on the Reddit people were saying, well, this case makes no sense. They're saying only Congress can disqualify someone. And so that means I could run my 16-year-old daughter for president and without an act of Congress, she's good. No, because the qualifications for president, natural born citizen, the age of 35, residency, all that stuff, that's in the body of the Constitution, right? It's Article 2. That's not in the 14th Amendment. And that's the difference, right? So those qualifications, if you're under 35, your local board of elections has every right to knock you off, right? It's the insurrection clause in particular we're talking about here, because that's part of the 14th Amendment. That's not in the body of the Constitution. Again, that's in that amendment of the Constitution that gave more power really to the federal government and limited the power of the states. And that's why that's a special case. I know a lot of people were struggling with that. And that's why I think a lot of people in the first place were predicting that this would be a slam dunk. He would be off the ballot because they weren't drawing that distinction. They looked at it like, you got to be over 35. You got to be a natural born citizen, resident 14 years, and you can't commit an insurrection. So you got, but those are separate provisions of the Constitution.
And it's just common sense.
Well, I didn't expect. I expected the outcome that they would allow him to be put back on the ballots that he was disqualified from for Trump. So it was expected, I think, from what I could see.
I think we
especially
all
with the
expected,
Supreme Court.
yeah, we all expected that would be the ultimate outcome. But Sheba, were you surprised that it was 9-0?
No,
Oh, you thought they all
No.
not
would
at
do
all. Yeah, not at all.
Can I ask, was anybody surprised by the two other elements of what the Supreme Court decided, which is both to hear the decision about whether a president has natural immunity from prosecution, both during time as president and afterwards, which is an insane notion, an argument they should not have heard. And
Vanity.
you guys surprised that they ended up delaying it until April 22nd or whatever, therefore delaying a lot of these cases from moving forward.
Well, this is a separate
No.
case, right? A separate question. But this is about the Jack Smith federal indictment. This isn't about state indictment, right? We're talking about federal immunity here. It
Right.
doesn't
A
really
case that Judge Chutkan seems to have like tried to move fairly quickly.
in New
But
York.
huh?
In New York, you're talking about.
Isn't it? No, isn't Chutkan the federal DC case?
That one is the one that this is holding up. But I'm saying in New York, the other state cases aren't being held up by this. The one in Georgia seems to be held up by the Fani Willis motion
Yes, unfortunately. Although that decision should be coming out soon
in a week or
as
so,
well.
probably. Yeah. So
Because I saw the closing arguments and stuff a couple of days ago, right? And
I
then
watched it too.
huh?
I saw that too. Yep.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that at the same time, the judge did mention the fact that he should have a decision in about a week.
He said, I think within 2 weeks at the time. That was about a week ago now, almost, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it should be coming up. That is interesting. And really quickly on that, because we discussed that a couple times on the show, we initially thought that there would definitely not be a disqualification there, but I do think that it's a little bit more in question now, given what happened subsequent to that discussion, because the state, I think, really dropped the ball, especially with some of their witnesses. It wasn't a good look, in something that showed.
No, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that the Trump team presented a bit of a clown show and a lot of theatrics. I don't think that there was a lot of substance in their argument.
I
And
agree there as well, but
I don't think
some
I
witnesses
don't think,
who did not look very credible, right?
and I will say this. I don't think,
case.
yeah, I don't think the judge is going to disqualify her, though I do think there are potentially merits to the argument that potentially she should herself step down because of kind of the historical nature of this case and make sure that it's kind of, perception wise, at least kind of just, unimpeached.
Yes. No, I would agree with that. I wouldn't be entirely confident that she won't be disqualified. I would think it's more likely that she's not disqualified than that she is. But I think it's a closer call now than I thought when I was first watching it, right? Because some of the witnesses did seem to lack credibility, and the judge seemed very interested in whether their relationship began prior to his being hired by her.
Right.
That didn't turn out too well, in my opinion, for her, because even though she had said no and he had said no, you did have at least one witness who said yes, and then but he was questioned about whether he was lying. I guess he thought it would be better for her to say that he was lying, but he also realized that saying he's a liar doesn't make him look too good either. So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place, and he stumbled on that. He was like, I don't know if I lied, and it just didn't come out looking good.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that happens. When it comes to the immunity question, I don't think they're going to say that he has complete immunity. Now, what they're talking about is immunity for acts that are alleged to be
Right, but here,
excuse me,
they
within
say
the
this,
outer bounds of his presidential duties, right?
but if they say that very obvious thing very late in May, which is what it seems like, you know what I mean?
Maybe even June. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then like nothing really starts until July. That's all of these things are problematic, man.
I agree. No, I agree. I definitely agree.
And like I
And
said,
there were those who said that they
Clarence
shouldn't have taken up that case, right? They didn't have to take that appeal. They could have just let it sit.
And unless Clarence Thomas frankly fucking steps aside and abstains due to a conflict because of Ginny,
He won't.
I think I mean, I don't think he will either, right? I don't think he will. I think that, in a just society, and if every one of these justices was actually, an ethical individual, then, maybe that would have been a potentiality, but no, unfortunately, with this SCOTUS and stuff, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's
All
definitely
right,
not gonna happen.
we can make that the poll question of the week, asking if people think that presidents should enjoy immunity from prosecution.
I think
Oh.
that's a good, yeah, that's a good one there. I think that's good.
Do we want to add the caveat, though, of even for acts that they allege are part of their presidential duties? Because that's what the Supreme Court is looking at, right? Alleged acts within the scope of their presidential powers.
Uh, I think they should be. I think they should be liable for those actions too, because otherwise it would protect them from direct corrupt action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they decide that they want to use their
that
powers specifically.
Sure, but we do know that presidents do enjoy a certain amount of immunity, right? For example, you don't prosecute presidents criminally for acts of war, even though some would argue that you should in certain cases, but we don't see that.
Well, hold on a second. No, I mean you're making a very interesting distinction. We don't prosecute presidents for acts of war. That's
presidents, right? They are free to do their job as president with certain immunities. I mean, we all understand that.
So, I mean, we prevent, the prosecution of, criminal acts by a lot of individuals in the U.S. government in terms of prosecutions in global courts, in foreign courts, of course, though. Well, the only thing I'm specifically aware of is that presidents cannot be prosecuted. They can't face civil prosecution, right?
Well, also criminal prosecution if it relates to their official powers. But the question is this? I mean, he's alleging that the insurrection was part of his official powers as president, and to me, it's pretty clearly outside the bounds of what he's supposed to do as president.
That's such bull.
So
almost had an Andre slip there.
All right, well, let's put the poll question out, see what people think of that. The poll question of the week is, do you believe that United States presidents should enjoy immunity from criminal prosecution, even for acts that they allege are part of their presidential duties?
I mean, look, guys, this is getting awfully close to the fucking Richard Nixon argument.
Right. Well, exactly. He said that if the president does it, it's not illegal. And I think I brought this up before. I was recently going back and watching the Bill Clinton depositions, right? And
it depends on the definition of what the definition of is.
Yeah, all that. But before he started, right, they said to him, do you understand that you're under oath? And if you make a false statement now, you can be liable for criminal prosecution as committing perjury. And he said, I do. Right? I understand. He didn't question it. He didn't say, oh, I'm the president, I could lie. He said, I do. And he kept it moving.
Yeah.
It seems like they're arguing that point now that, oh, well, that's not possible. So if you put it to them now and be like, okay, well, would Clinton have been liable then, even though Clinton acknowledged he would have been? If you ask the Trump people now under the ideology that they have, then they would have to say, no, Clinton would have been able to skate off. He had immunity.
You would hope.
No,
I don't know if they'll actually say that, though.
No, they definitely wouldn't say that. They make up a different. Yeah.
And the other part of it is too, it's very easy to make a case that you are lying under oath in order to preserve your own presidency and therefore the country and stuff. And technically, it's an act of the president, right? So what now? We don't prosecute presidents for perjury? Okay.
We never did. And this is all uncharted territory here.
Okay. I mean, an impeachment is a prosecution.
Not a criminal one, it's a political one.
Okay.
And that's the other thing that people were conflating when they're talking about you can't charge him because of the impeachment. He's already acquitted for insurrection. That's not a criminal trial. People saying that's double jeopardy, or unless he's convicted in that trial, that you can't remove him from the ballot. These have nothing to do with each other. This is a political process by being removed from office. It's not about a criminal conviction. And it doesn't affect civil matters either, right? Like the insurrection clause, removing someone from office. That's a civil matter. That's not a criminal trial either. So different standards, different processes, right? Different, everything's different about that. Um, but we are in uncharted waters. There's no question about that. And so as a country,
Yeah.
we are trying to figure all this out really for the first time, right? We never saw an indicted
And I
president.
think and I think the problem is like again, I just have this idea of like or that that meme image where like the dog is sitting in the house and everything's on fire and he's just sitting there calmly at the table just like watching it happen. Like I That's what I see happening. Like all of these things are like almost worst case scenario things, and it's just being talked about like it's just normal or just being played semantics with and being danced around. It's like at some point, are we going to be like, look, we are losing everything. Are we going to protect the country or not? Like, what's going on here?
So, Jay, the answer is we are not.
I and it's quite unfortunate, and it's yeah, it's scary in that regard.
We are sadly a country that has no like capacity to either learn from history at all or to even remember it.
I
Um,
think
it's just it's so terrifying to me, frankly. It's
And
just
I mean, we're doing the same thing everywhere though. Not even just the country. I think even just as a society and a system. I mean, we're doing the same thing with the environment. Like we know science has been saying for decades what's going to happen, and all we do is debate on how we can delay it so that we can preserve profits. Like we're doing the same thing everywhere, just watching it burn when we could be fixing things, when we know things are wrong.
though here's the major difference, right? Like I think that a lot of people can have different opinions on solutions for our problems with the environment, right? But
Absolutely.
how do we have so many people disagree that fascism is wrong, or that
Right.
Vladimir Putin is an evil fuck? You know what I
Right.
mean? That Donald Trump is not Alexei Navalny. He is not a political dissident. He is not
Right.
being, unfairly prosecuted by the state, or rather persecuted by the state. These are absurd things. Anybody who's
Sure.
saying should look at themselves in the mirror and just do like a 1-2, like a quick slap across the face. And like it's unbelievable to me that anybody believes this lunacy. You know what I mean?
So,
Absolutely.
Andre, do you want to talk a little bit about that situation in Russia? Because we haven't covered it. We're waiting for you to get on here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, folks. I think it's a little bit late. I think that if you're following the news, you're following the news. Alexei Navalny has been, either slowly murdered or quickly murdered by Russian forces while in a isolated Siberian prison for about 3 weeks prior to his death. He was, folks did not know where he was. They couldn't locate him. Then he reappeared. He was seen on video a day before prior to his death. In good spirits, maybe a little skinnier than normal and stuff, but in good spirits and good health. And then the next day he died from what is called by Russian forces sudden death syndrome, because these are the things that happen. We die suddenly, especially if you are against Vladimir Putin. It is a new part of WebMD.
Yeah,
If
I was
you
going to ask, is that an official medical term?
So apparently it is, but it's just a broad term for unexplained deaths that occurred supposedly naturally.
I've
Uh,
never heard that applied to adults, only with children with SIDS, right? Sudden infant death syndrome. That's the only time I've heard that sudden type of thing
correct.
applied. Wow.
Or in football?
It also applies if you are an adult living in any parts of the former Soviet Union and you have an opinion against Vladimir Putin and the current Kremlin makeup.
All right.
Yeah, someone should look at those symptoms. That's maybe they can do a research study to figure out maybe there's some drugs or something they can take, some therapies, exercises.
I'm sure that the Russians are working on a plan exactly for that.
Yeah, I would imagine so. We gotta be optimistic here.
Mhm.
I would suspect a good treatment for that might be um not a light jog, but a sprint that takes them across the border. Might be a good remedy or treatment for.
But yeah, so I mean, look, a lot of folks are getting arrested right now. Those that are, setting any flowers at any memorials, anybody who is seen as having been a supporter of Alexei Navalny, anybody who went to his funeral was videotaped, and has had their photographs taken. You know, and unfortunately, he was not a perfect individual, not with perfect policies or anything else, but he was the kind of this last really iconoclastic opposition leader against Vladimir Putin. The next following one is Kara-Murza, who's in doing a 25-year prison sentence himself. I mean, look, all these things are unfortunate. I do not think that there's any realistic change that's going to occur in Russia until Vladimir Putin is dead. And, at that point, if you do have a real leader who is a pro-democracy leader, I think that a lot of folks are going to get arrested and then tried for treasonous acts.
People were saying that he was somewhat equivalent to the Nelson Mandela of Russia. Do you think that those?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, look, there are shared similarities in terms of just the history, in terms of serving prison sentences, and that's definitely an image that Alexei Navalny and his supporters definitely try to cultivate. You know what I mean? But there are definitely major differences as well. You know what I mean? Alexei Navalny is a former FSB guy as well. He had some, not so democratic thoughts on Crimea. I mean, there are definitely negatives as well. Having said that, he did believe in democracy in his country, about having free elections. And for that he was there were multiple attempted assassinations until he eventually went back to Russia and then was arrested and imprisoned and eventually killed. So
I was just looking up some of the history here on the presidential immunity doctrine. And as you mentioned, in Nixon v. Fitzgerald, the Supreme Court said the president has absolute immunity in actions for civil damages for all acts. And this is where they use that within the outer perimeter of the president's official duties, right? So that wouldn't even apply necessarily to acts outside the quote unquote outer perimeter of their duties. And we can argue in this case if the insurrection, right, was within the inner or outer perimeter. I mean, I think if you can ask me, it's well outside the outer perimeter of the official duties, but that's part of what they're arguing about. And so they're trying to take this language that came from Nixon v. Fitzgerald relating to civil suits and saying that that also applies for criminal prosecutions. That question really is unanswered. However, in 2020, the Supreme Court issued an opinion saying that the president is not immune to state criminal proceedings, right? And that's why you do see these state cases able to proceed. The question is, can a federal one proceed? And then they're going to look at, I guess, whether the actions were outside or within the outer perimeter of his duties. But again, they may not have to reach that question if they conclude legally that there is no immunity, even for acts that are within the outer perimeter of his duties, right? So that's a legal question for the court to resolve.
Yeah, it's so disheartening all the way around. Just a quick interjection here where we were looking at those Super Tuesday results. Early results so far have Chris Christie in the lead in Oklahoma, with Nikki Haley in second place.
Is Trump not on the ballot there?
No, he's on
he's
on third.
On the ballot, bro.
He's third. He's third. In Vermont. Uh-huh.
How many precincts reporting?
It's only 2%. So I said early. It's very early.
Oh, gotcha.
In Vermont,
Haley's leading.
Very close. Is 16% of votes are in, and Trump's got 50.8% with Haley with 45.7%. So it's quite close there.
Yeah, she might be there actually.
But Trump is, I mean, New York Times is estimating that Trump's going to take all of them anyway. I just wanted to see Christie's name pop up here.
Christie, yeah, I never knew Chris Christie had immediate family members in Oklahoma. That's interesting. But No, it's kind of inconsequential at this point, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, what is Haley really doing right now?
She is
Aside from raising money and
she's
increasing her
plan
profile.
B.
Yes.
She's plan B for the GOP in case that the big scary orange asshole gets convicted.
They want
Why does she
to
need to be running though? I mean, she's still going to be plan B. It's not like anyone else is going to surpass her as the second choice.
No, but I'm
She
saying
has
she
to
wants to
show
go.
up.
She
She
wants to
still has
go
to
to
be
the
out there.
convention. She wants to see if she can potentially go to the convention with maybe one or two convictions with Trump and stuff, and maybe do an upset. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think
She's
it's
just
going
trying
to
to get
happen.
out there, keep her profile up, rack up as many delegates as she can, and just cross her fingers.
Yeah, basically.
Basically, I think that's what DeSantis's strategy was.
Well,
He
here's the
was
thing.
he was
DeSantis,
struggling for months, and he was just
yeah,
hoping. I think he was just hoping Trump would get convicted, so he'd have a shot.
I think initially that's what they were all were hoping for. But
Right.
as of now, DeSantis is better situated to win the nomination in 28 than Haley is.
I still disagree with you. I think that this time around we found out exactly how unlikable he generally is and how bad he is in a room. And unless
Agreed.
things change drastically in the next 4 years, I think that doesn't matter.
I
I think
don't,
that Ron
here's
DeSantis.
my counterpoint to that. I don't think what you just said, while I agree, matters to the Republican voting base. I think they dislike Haley that much for challenging Trump and saying what she's
No, no,
saying.
no, no. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that they're going to find somebody new to represent the MAGA.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I'm just saying comparing those two right now. I think it's just kind of
Oh,
funny.
right now, yeah, right now, I get it and stuff. But I just think that in terms of like the new MAGA generation and like Ron DeSantis carrying the torch for like idiots everywhere and stuff, it's just not going to happen.
No, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be others waiting to replace him. I just think it's funny that right now, I think he is in a better position than she is, right between those two to win the nomination next time. So she's out there doing all these things, right? Like she's still raising the money, she's still campaigning, she's still on the ballot, she's still trying to get these votes, trying to get these delegates. He's just sitting at home, and he's in a better spot than he is currently, than she is.
Guess so. I think he's a horrible one too. We definitely don't need him either.
Well,
Jesus.
who? It's funny. Can anyone even predict? Let's say that there is a presidential election in 28. Let's be optimistic and say democracy lives on. Can anyone predict what that general election would possibly look like?
In 2028?
Yeah.
I think and we kind of talked about this. On the Democrat side, I have no clue. They just don't have anyone. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to
I
be
think
viable. I think
Gretchen Whitmer, baby,
who?
Gretchen Whitmer,
Michigan.
governor of Michigan. Mm-hmm.
I think Democrats have a lot to do in order to give someone to raise someone's profile before then.
No,
Because
man,
it's just,
I think something like along the lines of a fucking Whitmer Murphy or something. Maybe he gives up his governorship in Pennsylvania to his wife, then runs with Whitmore and stuff. Man, like there are all sorts of potentialities,
Wait,
man.
Pennsylvania is Shapiro. Are you talking about New Jersey?
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about Jersey. My bad.
I have no idea the words that you just said. None of those people sound any way
So
familiar.
Phil Murphy is the governor of New Jersey. He's term limited and stuff. A lot of folks think that he might be running for Senate at some point, right? But
Didn't he also support his wife for the Senate seat at one point? And then she dropped out.
he's supporting his wife for the Senate seat now, for Menendez's seat, right?
She didn't drop out yet. I thought she did.
Did she? I haven't seen it recently and stuff.
I could be wrong on that, but I thought there was so much backlash to it that she backed out. But I don't know.
Yeah, and then
I
there's
heard
also,
something about this.
I know there's like a progressive Andy Kim, I think, in the race.
I think that Democrats have a lot of work to do for 2020. If they take this, if Biden beats Trump, they're going to have to do a lot to raise somebody's profile before the following election to be able to stay in office.
And historically, the odds are against that, right? When you go back to the beginning of history, really, you never see a party stay in office. And the Democrats are even worse than at this than the Republicans, but you don't see the same party stay in office in multiple election.
By the
We
way,
did have a big
Didn't that
run of
happen with
Republican leadership after the Civil War, right? But
didn't that
now,
happen with Reagan and Bush?
yeah,
Reagan and Bush. Reagan did 2 terms, and then Bush came in on the
Bush did one term,
yeah, Bush did one.
right? But it's rare, right? No,
Yeah, very
I don't think any two Democrats did that since Martin Van Buren took over for Andrew Jackson, unless you count people who died in office.
right. So yeah, they have a lot. And then on the Republican side, it's gonna be a wall of crazy. I'm sure DeSantis is gonna go back in, Haley's gonna go back in. Um, if Trump loses and he's still alive, he might go back in.
That's another question, also, right? Imagine he's still alive 4 years from now, but he doesn't win this time. Is he going to run again? He might.
It's because
He's not in
I don't
prison.
think he cares about it's not so much. I mean, he likes the power, he likes being in that position, he likes being visible, but it's also lucrative for him, and and it feeds his narcissism and ego. So the just going on and doing these rallies, I'm sure he just gets off on that.
I mean, also though, don't forget though, he also needs to keep raising money and stuff so that he can use
Right.
it, you know what I mean, donor money to pay off his legal fees,
Yeah.
and then potentially eventually start paying off, some of the bonds that he's going to owe, at least in New York State.
He should be in prison by that time, is what he should be. That's what
I
should
mean,
happen.
keep your fingers crossed. I doubt it will happen.
I doubt it as well. But I think as far as I think we're going to see probably pretty similar on the Republican ticket for the 2028 for the people that ran this time. But the Democrats is really, to me, is an unknown.
Look, I mean, look, if Trump wins, forget about elections. But we'll see.
Well,
Remember the Alamo?
yeah, I mean, you're saying you're expecting similar candidates, but aside from Haley and DeSantis, who's it going to be?
What do you mean?
I mean, who is the likely Republican nominee in 2028
If Trump wins or if Trump loses?
if he loses?
If he loses, I think it's somebody new. I think it's a what's her name and stuff. Who's the crazy lady from Arizona? It's
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No. Carrie
Marshall.
Lake?
Yeah, so I think it's a Carrie Lake type. I don't think it's Carrie Lake specifically, but a Carrie Lake type.
Do you think, though, that the GOP base would vote for a woman?
I think that a
They're
woman,
doing it now
a self-loathing woman, yes, they would.
Doing it now? What do you mean, Jay?
with Nikki Haley. They're
She's
giving her
not winning.
votes.
He's talking
She's
about
not winning, but she's
Yeah, if you
she's
want to call 12% winning, I mean, she's getting her clock cleaned.
she's what?
I said, if you want to call 12% winning, she's getting her clock cleaned by Trump.
Yeah,
I think she's getting.
But
Look, she's consistently getting 30 to 40% of the vote.
At
So
this
yeah,
point,
she's
I would
better than
say 12%. And as you said,
it's a two-person race, though.
huh?
It's a two-person race at this point, so she's picking up everyone else's voters too.
I mean, look, you can keep
but
saying
she also outlasted everyone else.
that again. Still, 30 to 40% of the vote is not nothing.
Yeah, she outlasted, I mean, for as far as Republican side,
What kind of
DeSantis.
argument is that, though? We're saying who can win the primaries next time. You're saying someone is winning because they got 30 to 40% of the vote.
No. Look, I'm not necessarily saying that. I do think that, look, if Trump loses, I do think that, some Republicans are going to shake shit off and stuff. If he's the nominee and then loses and then also is, has some felonies and stuff, I think that some of the Trump craziness is going to wane and then she does become the nominee.
Really?
Yeah. Because the money is going to be behind her, man. You're going to see nothing but Nikki Haley and stuff for 4 years.
Yeah, but you would need, I think, a big swing away from the MAGA populism.
No, I mean, look,
Mitt Romney's
Republicans will find the vote, even if like the few even if the few million crazies and stuff, like the really rabid, you know what I mean, like neo-Nazi and white nationalist, crazies and stuff, like go back underground and stuff and stop voting. I think that
I think you're overly optimistic at this point.
We'll see. I mean, look, I don't know. I can't
I don't think
predict
we're going to see that
I
dramatic
don't want to. I don't
shift
want to
in
predict
4 years.
anything this year or for 4 years from now, man. Because I don't know if we're going to have a country then. You know what I mean? Or what?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. I mean, it's very, and Biden, and that you sent me that interview with Biden, and he said it there, like, this is really a fight for the soul of the country.
Right.
It's not,
But
that's
it's
not
also,
understating it.
it's very telling that we can't predict what's going to happen in 4 years. It's just so wide open, on both sides. And I think that just shows you the moment that we're in, right? We can't even look to the future. We're so focused
Yeah.
on it. It is so monumental and important. And yeah, I mean, whatever happens this year is going to dictate what happens in the years to come, generations to come.
I think 2028, you know what? On second thought, 2028 uh might be AOC's year to step
What
into
are you
it.
living on? Jesus Christ.
It could be. I'm
I know
down.
you hate her, but I think she has the potential to
But you
be
were
a very
being,
strong candidate.
I would. So I
but you were
doubt
joking,
that it's
Jay.
going to be somebody from New York for the Democratic side and stuff for a very long time and stuff because it just doesn't seem like the calculus would make sense. But look, I would happily vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I
I
actually.
would too. I absolutely would too. And she's got a lot going for her. Think about it. Like, first of all, she's a very progressive. She's tied to some of the Bernie ideologies, which a lot of people would
Highly
like. She's a
Lost
woman
over and over again. Why would you
but
back
still
that?
she's a woman, which is going to get a lot of voters going on. She's a Latino woman, and that their demographic is rising steadily in the country. She's got a lot of boxes she could tick, and she's been very high profile for quite a while now.
Correct. And she's also shifted drastically in towards pragmatism as well. She's still a
Yeah.
progressive, but she's very pragmatic and she does a lot of moves that I really appreciate.
And
She's
now
also
she's got experience under her belt.
correct. And she's iconoclastic, which is a thing that like our party really needs. They need somebody with some charisma and some like, oomph. We don't have a lot of those. Though I do think that it's
Trying hard
She's
to get
young.
the Republicans. You guys are working overtime to give the
And
Republicans.
she's young, she's easy on the eyes, which does
Yeah.
play into public sentiment. Like,
Are you guys? Let me ask you this: are you guys secret Republican operatives?
you
Hey, bro,
hated her
are
from
you
the beginning.
secretly a Republican voter, bro? AOC is dope. So let's
is.
let's shush it up. As I said, I do think it's gonna be Gretchen before it is Alexandria because she's still quite young.
She's young. I think she has the potential at some point to be a contender.
Yes, no, I definitely agree with that. I do think that she might pass through the New York Senate first.
Mm.
I was going to just ask you that, Andre. Do you really think that she could even beat Chuck Schumer?
I'm not talking about beating him, but succeeding him. I think it's entirely possible.
All right. Well, speaking of people smoking too much weed, New York City landlords are facing fines now if they don't evict illegal weed stores. And this is coming from the city. The city is giving threats of $10,000 fines for landlords who are not evicting these illegal pot shop tenants. And this is interesting, Jay, because we were talking about how people complain now about these shops that are popping up. Of course, we know that weed was legalized and there's a process to obtain a license and open up legally. But in the meantime, you're seeing all of these shops that are not legal and the communities are very upset, a lot of complaints, but it's taking a long time to shut them down. Right now, they got to go through the sheriff and the process is never as quick as one would hope. Well, this is I guess a way that the mayor of New York here is trying to be proactive, although I find it interesting because this isn't law enforcement, right? This is a task force on cannabis enforcement, they're calling it, but they're just threatening to fine these landlords if they don't proactively evict the tenants. What do you think about that?
My question, does if law enforcement know they're there and that they are in violation, why can't law enforcement deal with it instead of threatening the landlords to deal with it?
Well, they don't have the authority to do it. The sheriff has to do it now. I mean, it's not the city.
Why can't the sheriff go in there and do it then?
Well, they
Like,
are doing that, but it's taking long, right? It's that I guess the process doesn't allow them to do it as quickly as we would want them to.
yeah, I think we did talk about that. It's just I'm confused on why that's an issue. Like, why can't the sheriff just walk in there and be like, all right, you're done. Like
Oh,
you know
for
you're in
one,
violation. We know you're in violation. You're done. Like
the sheriff isn't a court of law. I mean, that's number one. You do have due process, right?
yeah, but if they're violating the law, can't they even just be uh arrested for operating illegally?
Okay, but now you're talking about two different things. We're talking about shutting down the store, though.
Well, that would essentially start shutting them down. If
Oh,
you
so you're
start
just saying forget about the stores. You're just saying arrest the people.
the owners, like I wouldn't go at the workers. I would go at the owners.
Business owners.
Um,
But doesn't
because
that get us into, okay, that's slightly different from what I was talking about is actually shutting down the store, right? Ordering the store closed, which
right.
is not something you can just walk in off the street and be like, oh, there's a lot of weed here. Show me your license. You know, got one, close right now. You know, it doesn't work that way. There's a process that you got to go through. And of course, they have a chance to show that they actually are allowed to be there and they shouldn't close. But you're talking about something slightly
to
different.
be fair,
How would they if the sheriffs can't do that or don't know that, how is it the landlord's gonna expect it to know that? Do they have to check their
No,
paperwork
so
before they
right.
decide
So
what
we're talking
business
about
they
now.
open in
Hold on
there?
a second. We're kind of jumping all over the place. Backing up a second, you were talking about arresting owners, right? The shop owners. Okay, you could do that in theory, right? And then give them a trial where they can defend themselves, and if they're convicted, they can get a prison sentence or get a felony, or however you want to do it. But doesn't that get us right back into that war on drugs territory where we were trying to avoid? I mean, we legalized marijuana. Why are we now going back to criminally?
No, I agree with that. No, I agree with that. Like I think it should probably be, a little bit easier to open these shops. But I'm thinking in when you're questioning the idea of putting it on the responsibility of the landlord renting the space, like it doesn't seem like it's their responsibility, or how would they even know
Well,
that
they're being
this person
notified. The
is
city is notifying them now, and they're saying that you have a tenant in your building who is illegally selling marijuana, cannabis products. And if you don't evict them, you'll face a civil penalty. So they're not threatening them with criminal prosecution, but threatening
Here's
them
my question.
if they don't.
Why are they giving the civil penalty to them first instead of going to directly to the people who are actually doing the selling?
Because they might just pay the civil penalty and keep selling their weed. They're trying to get these shops out of there.
I don't know, it just seems like it's a deferred responsibility type of thing. I mean, I get it, and maybe yeah, that's a good way to do it as well. But it's just like if you know who's doing it and you know that they're in violation, there's some other there's a remedy to be able to deal with that directly.
I mean, I would say it would be feds. It would be the feds that would be able to deal with it directly and stuff because they are able to shut down, you know, folks that sell cigarettes or things like that illegally, right? They're the ones that actually shut those down because it's interstate fucking issues. And,
Commerce. But
yeah.
Andre, according to the
issues
feds,
like
this
that
is
and
all
stuff.
illegal, right?
Things that aren't taxed, you know what I mean, correctly in terms of the state and whatever. So like it's the feds that shut down those, shops that sell cheap cigarettes, for example. It would be the feds, I think, that can also deal with this issue similarly. Now, in my opinion, I don't think
Andre, hold on a second, though. You mentioned the feds. According to the feds, this is all illegal, right? They're not going to be discriminating. Which are you a legal shop? Every shop is illegal as far as the feds are concerned.
Yeah. But my point is that they can also turn a blind eye to things that are taxed by New York State versus things that are untaxed by New York State. They can make those inroads and stuff. They can make that decision and stuff along with their counterparts in New York State legal authorities and stuff. So look, there are ways that this could actually be taken care of in a quasi-legal fashion with the expedience that would be deemed necessary by the folks that are against having those illegal weed shops. There are pathways to actually do this. Nobody just does it efficiently. We have one of the most broken bureaucracies like ever, and people act really stupid a lot of the time. But I also don't think that anyone should really be bothering with any of this, to be fair. I think we have much bigger problems than a few weed shops in the city during a time that not enough people are getting licenses in an orderly and efficient fashion.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we had discussed previously, allowing these licenses to be processed. And I did speak with the head of the Cannabis Control Board, right, in Albany, who was talking about now that they've processed hundreds of these licenses, they're going to improve on, what worked and try to cut out what didn't work, what was taking too long, and try to speed things up going forward. And so hopefully we do see more of that. In the meantime, we see here the mayor and his task force sending notices to 435 landlords. So quite a few people that they're going after.
That boggles the mind.
This was consistent with my suggestion and others who have been saying this, that you have to hit the landlords in the pocket. How else are you going to do it?
Right.
I don't think
it just boggles the mind.
People is the answer.
The whole scenario is kind of boggles the mind. Like you said, 430 some shops that have storefronts that are operating explicitly.
They're all over the place, Jay. Come to New York, you see them.
But they're operating explicitly illegal. So first of all, like,
hold on a second. What do you mean by explicitly illegal? There's not a sign saying that we're illegal.
If the city is sending out 430, that means the city knows 430 people are explicitly operating illegally. The city knows.
What do you mean by explicitly, Jay? Explicitly?
Yeah. If you wouldn't send a notice to someone that you weren't sure, if they aren't sure that they
explicitly would be like them saying it. Or it's obvious.
Well, semantics, but yeah, they
My
are.
point is that they're not holding themselves out as illegal shops, though. So there are some legal ones mixed in with the illegal ones, right? So it's not like you can look at them and be like, that one's illegal, that one's legal, that one's illegal, despite seeing it.
Yeah, but apparently the city can if they sent out these 430.
Again, but that was after investigation, right? It's not just like they can just eyeball them and see it. They have to look into it.
Right, but they've done it. That's my point. They apparently have done it, and so these shops are one, they're continuing to operate. The city knows they're operating illegally. The people running them know they're operating illegally, and just apparently don't care that they're operating.
What they're trying to do, they're trying to get their licenses. They're just opening them prematurely.
Right, and yeah, I get that, but it's just like how they do with prostitution. You see the prostitutes on the street, and all the cops know they're selling, and everyone's just staring and watching. Like,
yeah, but how do you know just by the outfit someone has on? You can't profile people like that either. That's why
I'm not talking about the outfit, but if you've watched the transactions, if it's the same thing with this. Apparently, the city has enough information to know that they're operating illegally. They shut down restaurants for less. I mean,
yeah, but even that isn't immediate, right? I mean, you might have to get a health violation, but it's not like someone just walks off. A cop doesn't just drive by and walk in like, all right, this whole restaurant shut down now. I mean,
look, a health inspector can shut a restaurant down after having a meal there. So I don't know if you're necessarily speaking
health inspector, but they did health inspection. He's talking about the cops just coming in and just shutting someone down like immediately.
Why is there not I think Jay's point is, why is there not a counterpart to like a health inspector, somebody who is a tax inspector saying, hey, your shit is not being taxed correctly, we're shutting you down? Why is there not somebody all you got to do is really buy tape.
Buy tape?
Buy what?
Yeah, but big yellow tape, you shut the shit down, and then by order of New York State and stuff, this business is no longer fucking legal and stuff. Boom, boom, boom. What's the
and the difference from a cop just walking by and saying, okay, you're illegal, we're shutting you down, is that we just pointed out the city apparently has done the investigation and has pointed out 430 some places that are illegal. So they know the data is there, they have it.
Well, and that's, I think, speaking to the problem, right? If the city is jumping through these hoops saying, all right, we've got this data, we know, or we've identified the illegal shops, but we can't get them shut down quickly enough. So we're going to go this extra mile of, there's a workaround. We're going to threaten the landlords with the fine if they don't do it themselves. That just speaks to the fact that the system isn't working.
I completely agree.
Enough, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And if that's what they have to do to be able to actually get to enforcing it how they're supposed to, then there's something there that, in the process that's, not working properly. So it's just crazy to me that many are operating. It just I don't know, it's kind of crazy.
Here we go. We have comment from the sheriff here saying that according to the sheriff, it's quicker and easier for landlords to boot illegal pot shops than for city and state authorities who first have to initiate legal proceedings to do so, such as the NYPD moving to shutter a shop under the nuisance abatement law. Landlords have clauses and leases with commercial tenants that says they could be evicted for engaging in activities or violating moral conduct. The landlord has the greatest leverage to get this done. You break the lease, you're gone. We will assist the landlords with that. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about
Okay, well that makes more sense.
I have a question.
But that's what we're talking. Hold on a second, Andre. That's what we're saying, though. We're saying that the legal process.
I have a question.
Takes too long, and so they're trying to use this workaround by having the landlords do it because they can get them out quicker.
I have a question. I have a legitimate question, and don't say that it's because I smoke too much pot. Here's so the Untouchables, the U.S. Treasury Department, Elliot Ness, prohibition, non-taxable alcohol, things that are not taxed by the U.S. government. My question is, why is there not an Elliot Ness non-taxable weed shop counterpart, like a guy that's like super self-righteous Kevin Costner type, like busting down doors and saying, hey, your shit is not taxed. I'm going to just like break all these bushels and barrels of weed. And then we're going to put a big notice on the door saying nobody can come in. And just like basically we haul it all in and, you know, whatever. Like, I don't understand why that's not a thing.
Because by the time that guy got finished shuttering the shop, he'd be across the street buying Twinkies.
I think it's still kind of, since it's kind of new, maybe they haven't set that process up. Maybe I don't know.
Why is the U.S. Treasury Department not into this and stuff? Again, this is not like tax stuff.
No,
it's just crazy to me.
Also, concern, because I've spoken to some of the players involved in this, right? There's concern about overly prosecuting people. The whole point was,
well, that's true, right? Yeah, that's why
away from the war on drugs, to not ruin people's lives with criminal prosecutions over marijuana. So you don't want to go right back to that and be like, well, now these illegal shops are opening up, let's throw them all in jail, or you know what I mean?
So again, I've
trying to find the right balance here.
You guys you guys are asking what to do if you guys want to do something about it. My position is we should leave it all alone because who cares?
Well, you can't do that. You can't just do that.
Why?
Because there has to be some sort of processes in place. What if people start selling laced weed in there? Like, you got to have some kind of checks and balances, you know, especially if you're doing opening it up.
Hold on a second. There's
filing taxes and business.
Well, hold on a second. There's already prosecutions about poisoning somebody. That's a criminal act if you poison somebody and they have ill health effects from it.
So you're kind of taking a libertarian approach, Andre, and you're saying that we shouldn't have any license.
In terms of drug policy, yes, I very much take the libertarian approach.
There are people who have that opinion, right?
I'm very much of a pro-Portugal drug policy type of guy, but at the same time, you know, you can't just legalize everything simultaneously without having some sort of buffer system to, you know, keep people alive, to make sure that, like, you know, you don't suddenly have a bunch of homeless folks out in the street shooting dope like they do in Oregon. You know what I mean? So it's like, or in Maine or whatever and stuff, whichever one that's having the issue.
So Andre, so you're saying really that there is no need for the state to even grant licenses for shops?
I think, no, I do. I think that we should just have New York State should just make it legal and stuff. But I do understand why they're granting licenses, so that, you know, certain people get them first and can open up businesses first. But now that they've messed up the process to such an extent and everybody's opened up shops, like, it's a problem and stuff.
What about the tax revenue?
They really have to blame themselves.
You mentioned taxes. Doesn't having a properly licensed scheme help enable to bring in the tax revenue?
So listen, I'm pro tax revenue, right? But my position again is the fact that the state messed up its own part of providing these licenses and making this process accessible and opening up more shops, despite the fact that there's a demand there. You wouldn't have, as Jay said, 430 shops illegally throughout the city and stuff if there wasn't demand for legal product inside of a store. Right.
Oh, and so do you think some of these shops are just taking advantage possibly of the fact that there are legal shops out there now? And so you can't immediately tell which one is legal, you know, just driving by or walking by. And so maybe they weren't even interested in going the right way. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are, but you might also have bad faith actors who are just trying to take advantage of the situation and say, I'm going to open up a pot shop and I'm going to do it off the books. I'm never going to get licensed. I'm just going to be here as long as I can, taking advantage of this new climate.
how bold is that? That's what really blows my mind. How bold is that to just open up a full-blown physical location of weed, knowing that you're doing it illegally, and just think, yeah, I'm gonna do it until I get caught and whatever. Like it's just so bold. It's just that blows my mind. That there's just that many people who are just like, yeah, screw it, whatever.
I mean, not to stereotype, but maybe these are people who smoke a lot of weed. I don't know.
Like it's one thing like those people if they were selling it on the street illegally, right? You haven't set up a storefront. Like this is another level to being like, yeah, in
No,
your
no,
face.
the fact that you're actively paying New York City fucking real estate and stuff and like doing like illegal shit in that storefront is in fact mind blowing because real
Isn't it
estate,
crazy?
commercial real estate in New York City is expensive as hell. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and
I've
it,
seen so many legal businesses closing down. The fact that you're like setting up an illegal business and shit, like, and saying like, you know what I mean? Whatever, man. You know,
that's another crazy point. You're absolutely right. Like, why wouldn't you just sell it without going through a shop if you're
correct,
gonna do it illegally and then
correct.
keep that rent money?
Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Also, the
crazy.
fact that we always hear how difficult it is to evict a tenant now, right? People, landlords tell you this all the time that the tenants have all the rights. You'll be in court for months or years, especially
Right,
during coming out of COVID, right? Oh, forget about all
right,
the backlog. You can never do it. And now what they're telling us is it's actually easier to go through the eviction process, as hard as we hear it is all the time, than it is for authorities to shut down these stores. That's crazy too.
yeah. It's just funny to me. But I'll be clear that I'm not saying that I would want like even if they go through and arrest or deal with people that are running these illegal shops. I don't think the people employed there should be messed with, nor the customers. So it's not about prosecuting people on smoking, selling, or whatever that. This is more about them operating without the proper licenses.
I
So
also, by the way, I would also like to point out that potentially you should also probably not give jail time to even the business owners who are just, you know what I mean, as long as they're not selling a product that is harmful to people and stuff. Again, you know, what I mean, maybe financial penalties is probably more
right,
that bag and stuff rather than actual,
right,
prison time. Like, why are we putting more fucking people
right,
into either
And if the
state benefit
landlords
custody
if the
or
landlords
unsupervised?
know, and it's one thing if they don't know, but if they do know that their tenant is using their real estate to operate an illegal shop, I've got no problem with telling the landlords that the tenant has to go. It's not about throwing
right.
the landlord in jail or ruin their life, but just make it so that they've got to go. They've
But
got to go.
listen,
And
Yeah.
I think that we can just all agree on one thing that everything moves a little bit too slow nowadays due to like certain bureaucracies and systems in place. Like we
Yeah.
need to like cut a lot of red tape in a lot of the things that we do in order to make things more efficient.
Well, that almost sounds like a bottom line. So I think it's a good time to go to the bottom line. And we're going to give it to Andre, but I'm going to challenge Andre to do it without cursing.
oh,
I don't know if you can do it, but
Yeah,
Andre, what is the bottom line? Whatever you want to talk about in this last minute here.
yeah, look, the bottom line is that given that it is Super Tuesday, I do recommend that even if this November you don't see anybody on the ballot that you really, really like, please vote to keep our democracy maintained, to make sure that the country's together. I know that there is a growing movement of folks that are very underimpressed with Joseph Robinette Biden. I saw more than 100,000 people cast that ballot in a primary in Michigan. I understand folks, are upset and they have every possible reason to be. Having said that, I'm very nervous about the numbers in swing states. And I would like to remind folks that the alternative is just so significantly awful that, go out and vote. Go out and vote. That's all I'm saying.
Go out and
I
vote.
think
The message on the Super Tuesday. Next week, I guess we'll have more results to report. We'll see what happens in California as well, right? That Senate race going on. So a lot to talk about as we continue here. Jay, where can people find us?
they can find us on YouTube, Instagram. We put the videos up of these discussions every week. You can also get us at anywhere podcasts are available, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all of those places. Automatically have it pushed to your device. And then every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, hit us up here on Facebook and join in on the conversation.
Yes, sounds good as always. Thank you to Sheba. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Jay. Thank you to all of you for tuning in and checking us out. We've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.